Welcome to Seething Airfield on what is really the 40th anniversary of when we first got going here. It's been a lovely day for me and for those who lay behind some of the preparations for today. A lovely day because you're here. You've travelled, many of you, great long distances, and in many cases, of course, we've been able to renew acquaintances with people we knew 25 or 30 years ago who flew here. The people who, not so much from the flying standpoint, but from the point of work here, did so much to lay the foundation stones on which everything else has stood in the intervening years. Well, Seething was one of a diverse range of airfields built very quickly between 1942 and 1943 in readiness for the arrival of the major components of the American Air Force. Civilian contractors built the place, Langs. I think it took about 18 months to actually build the airfield. It was commissioned in the autumn and early winter of 1943 and eventually was populated by about 80 of the big B-24 Liberator bombers.
Jimmy actually came round mine to ask if he'd like to start a flying club, and I thought he meant the model club because I was wrong. And we came here, nothing was here, and excuse me, Jimmy says, come over on Sunday and I'll be there in my aircraft. I said, well, this is completely bare. All I saw was a messenger standing here.
That all started, there was a messenger landed up here, and being about 16 and a local spotter, you know, he rushed up on me, I don't know, motorbike or whatever, and that was Jimmy Hussey's and weighing the airfield up to see whether that was okay for a flying club.
Well, I learned to fly with a bunch of enthusiasts in the west part of Norfolk in the late 50s, and we used to come over to this area because I lived and worked here, and on one occasion actually landed here experimentally and realised there was the opportunity of bringing flying to this immediate part of the world. And we actually leased the airfield, and that got us started, and we had to build enough enthusiasts to make the whole thing work. And we built that up over about 5 years.
We all mocked in the old hangar over here, which now got pulled down. I mean, Jimmy got me to go over the other side of the airfield, find all the wartime bricks and brick round the bottom. And you know, for rides in messengers and things.
Well, a tremendous amount of work was necessary because, in fact, the runway had been used as the dump for bricks and military material and rubbish, and the perimeter track was readily available in chunks, and we used the northern chunk of it, marked it out with threshold markers, and used that for our flying. The farmer here had a bulldozer, which he was made available to us, though he told us we're not to damage the plate on it too much. And people like Dickie Bolter and Bill Wicks, who were part of the original team here, and a whole series of other people, Gordon Craik, gave an enormous hand in getting that material moved. It took us about 18 months to clear the runway. Now we could use the runway and regard this just as a perimeter track again.
We rented the place on a 15-year lease, and then the farming world became very, very difficult for these farmers, and so he decided he would sell it, or sell us the runways and a few pieces of land with it. And so in 1964, 64, we purchased the runways.
For many of the 115 members of the Waveney Flying Group who actually own Seething Airfield now, a plane is not simply for getting from A to B. It's for enjoying the sheer fun of flying too. And as former RAF flying instructor Keith Nunn showed me round, I was introduced to his own plane, which has a real story to tell.
This is the Queen of the Skies. It's the oldest chipmunk in the world. Not only in Europe, in the world. It was a prototype, the first one ever made.
Really? So that was before they actually got the model right, was it?
No, it's very, very much modified now. Built in 1946. Splendid machine. We think she's the prettiest. We all love her, and we can do.
But you must have to be quite sedate, really, I suppose, in an elderly plane like this, do you?
Not really. It's capable of being thrown around, and we were telling the chaps this morning that we could have you doing a loop in 10 minutes.
I've never seen a word from this angle before. I'm hanging onto this cushion like it's dear life itself.
magnificent men in their flying machines.
My heart stopped when the 140 horsepower engine cut out for a few seconds at the top of each loop. And it didn't help to know that this Chipmunk T10 wasn't actually designed for inverted flight. When you're being thrown around in over 1 ton of metal, falling from a height of 2,000 feet in a series of barrel rolls, slow rolls, spins and quick flips, you could almost believe when the engine stops that it will never start again.
Upside down. Magnificent men in their flying machine. They go up to the up, they go down to the down.
I left my tummy in Yarmouth. Wow.
Now I know what those wartime pilots meant by coming in on a wing and a prayer. I quite literally didn't know if I was on my head or my feet. But the feeling of your stomach being somewhere near your ears, of hanging upside down in the sky with nothing but a safety belt between you and oblivion, the horizon which does crazy circles in front of your streaming eyes, all add up to one of the most exhilarating experiences I've ever had. And I promise I'll never ever scream on a Big Dipper again.
That's all right.
I've never seen the word from that angle before.
No problem. What a constitution.
Bit wobbly.
You're okay.
Yeah, my ears hurt.
I think she's earned this,
Of the
John.
Waveney Flying Group, you're now known, remember, we all think you're very brave. You know, Keith's never done that before.
As always, everything done here is done by the members on behalf of the members, and it's no different now to what it was from the very inception of this organisation.
Some people wanted to take the place over, and we had people come out here in big cars with bags of money, and they said, we'll buy you out and all this kind of thing, but we didn't let them do that.
It was never founded on that basis.
No, it wasn't founded on a basis. I mean, although we all have shares in the group, they only face value.
I think there's only about 50 members all told in those days, and there's about 3 or 4 mechanics on XRAF, and we just started off like that. I did the repairs, and then Mr. Spot flying, probably go to France, Belgium or Holland.
Well, I joined in 1961, basically because I was interested in aircraft. They were the bee's knees for young lads in those days. We had old cars, but we never had anything as exciting as aircraft, so we got involved with it that way.
I built and operated North Deans at Great Yarmouth for 30 odd years, and then later on in the late 60s I joined Jim Crampton and we formed Rig Air and then Anglian Air Charter, which eventually we sold out to KLM and became Air UK. But my own personal things, I was just a private pilot for many years, but I did a bit of air gunning. I was a flight engineer on Lancasters during World War II, of course, and it just really went on from there, and I retired, it seems amazing, nearly 15-20 years ago.
I was an airline pilot when I first came here, and I saw this tiger moth advertised in Flight magazine, and that was my first contact with sealing. This was just about 30 years ago this month, and I came along here and met a chap called Tom Connor, who was an instructor. In fact, he was the chairman of the group, and Tom took me for a ride in this Tiger, and I fell in love with it.
Jimmy Host season flew in to Tivenham in his Messenger and told me that they started flying here. So one day I came over and joined, and they had a Tiger Moth, Papa Victor Papa then. That unfortunately was crashed, killing the pilot years later when I was chairman. And we advertised, and for another one, and I went to Cambridge and saw that one as a yellow tiger, and talked committing into buying it. I drove down, or flew down there rather, with 3 other people, and we flew it back here.
Because this was the era of Tiger Moths and Manchesters and Osters. They were the principal aircraft. And we bought a Tiger Moth in the very first year we're here for £250, would you believe? A very handsome Tiger. And then ultimately added 2 wooden aircraft, which are of the era, a Whitney Strait and a messenger aircraft, and built it up from there. The flying costs, of course, were much different from today because there was no value-added tax, there was no high custom tax on fuel. So we were flying for £2.50 an hour, £2.50 an hour, quite extraordinary on the Tiger, and about £4 on the Messenger because it had radio and more sophisticated aircraft equipment.
To enable us to buy the airfield, we held air shows, and I think Bill can tell you, I don't know, we had thousands of people here. They became very popular, and
the first one I think we had about 3,000 people on the field, and we didn't really have the staff to cope with it. But it was chaos. I mean, there were aeroplanes landing, coming in from all parts of the country. I think we had about 60 aircraft on that day, and it was completely, frightening. Aeroplanes with propellers whipping around and little kids all over the place. You could just imagine, kind of.
Yes, but I mean, it did get organised in the end, and it was through that we made the money to purchase the runways and Perry track.
Aircraft have improved and they're so easy to fly now compared to what they used to be.
Well, it's a much more sophisticated era we live in now. In those 40 years, the standard of living in this country has doubled. Real purchasing power that people earn from their hard-worked effort purchased is twice as much. So it's a much more sophisticated type of aircraft with much more sophisticated equipment, marginally easier and demanding skills to fly. And it's a delight and a pleasure to me to realise that over 100 pilots have trained here down through the years, and we've got all sorts of fellows, members here, from Concorde pilots to the training captain of the helicopter unit at Norwich, for example, a whole range of diverse people who come here to enjoy recreational flying with us.
Well,
I suppose it was something that I never thought I'd be able to do. Then my husband started to fly, and I thought, well, it's something that would be nice to do, and so I started.
One of the most difficult things about being an instructor is to know when to grab the controls. The whole thing is you've got to leave it until the last moment to see if they can recover themselves. But yes, we do have to grab the controls from time to time, but never really been any serious difficulty with students. Most of the students here are fairly switched on people, and as long as you take them slowly and something, they cope pretty well.
I should say that in those days the flying was, in some ways the training was stiffer because it was a tailwheel aircraft which demands different skills for takeoff and approach, and we flew at a 500-foot circuit for economy.
You're responsible for training, making sure that all the students do whatever they need to do to get their licences. You have to fill in about 6 pieces of paper before you can be actually licensed for training, which means you have to sort out the fire engine and everything else. So that's what the duty pilots train to do. You sort out the training programme, you make sure that the aeroplanes have had checks, that they haven't run out of hours, that they are serviceable.
I think they've basically become disorientated because of the everything unusual to them, everything's new, there's a lot of noise, and they're doing something that is exhilarating, and particularly if you're trying to teach them something, that they tend to be thinking about what's going on rather than what they're learning. But it's always terribly satisfying to take something up for the first time, yes, and once they're off the ground, they always relax.
No, I don't think I found anything particularly easy, but I suppose it's probably the thing that most people find. It's thinking, would you ever get it to land, and land smoothly?
Most of them can manage quite nicely when what they're having to do is something that they instigate themselves. But when they have to wait for the aeroplane to react, and then they have to react like you do in a landing, then of course that is a little bit more difficult. So yes, the landing's the usual sticking point, and when you get on to cross countries it's quite a high workload with the radio and navigation and keeping the aeroplane at the right height on the right heading all at the same time.
Well, I've just recently done my qualifying cross country, and I now hope to, in the next few weeks, do my NFT and GFT and qualify.
I've had a doctor and an architect, that was what I was trying to think of, an architect here who actually failed their first written exam. Flying was all right, but they failed their written because they didn't bother.
The thing that puts most people out there is actually to get them to fly the aeroplane themselves and see why it flies, and a lot of people who don't like flying in airliners can often become more relaxed by flying a light aircraft and learning why it flies, and they feel they're in control and realise it's not such a magic art.
People learned to fly elsewhere, they came here, they had to have a check ride with one of the instructors. More than once I found them going to take off, the person who'd used this aircraft before had switched the petrol. And these people got in, started the engine, and were going to taxi out with the petrol still turned off.
Some people, they consider coming out, checking the aeroplane, doing all the things that go with it as part of the thing. It's all part of the day out. So if you sort of cut short your checks and things like that, then you know, that's some of the enjoyment gone.
We had an engine failure once. I was flying with Dave Percy, and a loud bang and the engine stopped. And Dave did a beautiful forced landing, luckily on Framlingham Airfield.
I had problems with headphones once that I had to plug into the pilot side and in the passenger side, and that was a bad connection, and every time I used it I had to pull it out, push it in, and about 300 feet off the ground at Ipswich, and I went to transmit. I said the guy really pull it out and push it in, and he got hold of the control column and pulled it out and pushed it in. About 200 feet above the house at Ipswich. Yeah, very funny.
And there was the classic one where I explained to the person who was doing the night rating that we don't bother saying over on the radio anymore, we leave it out, but he insisted on doing it. So when Norwich asked us to call when we were ready to turn left base, he said, Golf Charlie Sierra ready to turn left base leg over. And I said to him, I don't think you should have said that. And he said what? I said left base leg over. But I think the controller was asleep, so he didn't actually notice.
Membership is still very much around the 100 to 120 mark, much as we like, and we're very happy with that. Students are, as always, a little bit of an issue with regard to there's either too many or too few. At this moment in time, we're keen to have 1 or 2 more students in place, but you know, the organisation's not a commercial organisation, and we're very happy to have 4 or 5 at any one time, and they enjoy their flying.
We still do get the man in the street here to fly and to learn to fly, but we have got more prosperous members, should I say, with their own aircraft, because we've got, I think, somewhere around about 14 privately owned aircraft on the field at the moment.
No, I believe we're a unique organisation in the UK. We're a unique flying organisation, and I very much hope that we're going to stay that way. It's been like this now for 40 years, and I'd very much like to think certainly in the next 10 years, in the foreseeable future, the organisation stays unique and stays very much a part of the flying community.
I wrote to some of the American airmen who were here in 1943 who are still very interested in the airfield and explained, I did this just weeks ago, that the airfield is now 57 years old, that it's secure in that we've looked after the eastern end here by way of land ownership. And the result is that this airfield and its control tower, and I hope you'll get a chance to look at that today, they will last for 100 years.
Well, I'm very pleased with the present situation. There's lots happening on the airfield. The old hangar, which has been here now for some 30-something years, is now about to be demolished and a new hangar built. This is going to furnish us with 6 new hangar slots, 4 of which are being financed and used by members of the organisation, and 2 of the slots are going to be used for club aircraft so that we get some protection for those. As I said, my name's Phil Dobson. I'm chairman this year of Wing Task 95, and I'd like to just say thank you all very much. We're absolutely delighted that there are so many faces here this afternoon. Faces that many of us newer members don't know, of course, but we're absolutely delighted that you've made the effort to be here.
They were marvellous years while they happened. And one has to say...
Hard work at great
Well,
fun.
yeah, but one has to say that never again will you see the like of those years.